I'm very happy to invite our first speaker in this session, Dolan Parker, Vice President, Intel Product and Insurance and Security Group, General Manager, Incident Response. Okay, come aboard.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. And on behalf of Intel, we need some slides. There we go. On behalf of Intel, allow me to welcome you to this fantastic event. And I'm just thrilled to see so many people from across the industry that are here to work with us on what we think is just an absolutely important imperative to secure data for end customers. Now, we at Intel are creating the building blocks that are the trusted foundation for a data-centric world. And at the heart of that is data. And that's just critically important for all of us to think about. Now, you've seen certainly estimates from IDC that have said today we have about 33 zettabytes of information that is available on the web. Now, if you look at the data that they provide as far as growth, we're talking about going from 33 to 175 zettabytes of information by 2025. Some 90% of the data that's even been created today was created in the last 2 years. That's an enormous growth in data. And data is now a currency just as much as oil was in the 20th century. And we all need to take that into account. And I think we as an industry need to think a lot more about what this growth in data is going to mean for us in the decades to come. Now, the data is not just some abstract concept. Data is very much personal and very much related to us. It's our passport information. It's our health information coming off of our smart watches or a glucose monitor. It's your financial records. It's your credit card information. It might be your mortgages. It's also very personal information. It's who you know. It's who you're connected to, who you're related to, and what your thoughts and ideas are in terms of your social media and how that gets mined. This data is very personal. And I know, my credit card was stolen just a couple of weeks ago, and I know how personally I was hurt by that and concerned about what that meant for me in terms of my financial status. So this data is very personal to us. And in the 21st century, I think we have to think about how we protect that data in a different way than we do in the 20th century. Now, I think trust is foundational. I think trust from our customers in our technology is an absolutely critical foundation for us as an industry moving forward. I also think that it is foundational for us as developers and engineers in creating an environment for innovation as well. And symbols of that trust and how that manifests in the next decades is going to be critical for all of us. And just to give you some examples of, I think, things that cause those symbols to be in and around us every day. You're here and feel safe in this auditorium because there are sprinklers overhead and fire extinguishers and exit signs. Your children are safe in your car because of car seats and safe at home because of special containers for medications. These are all symbols of safety, and we as an industry need to come together and think about what those are going to be to protect data going into the next decade. Now, if you thought of what it was like in the last few decades, we viewed security of our data in a very different way. The attacks on our data were really about software. It was really about corrupting your information. And it really didn't take into account the connectedness that we have today. Now, if we look ahead, billions of sensors are coming online every single day. Not every day, every year. But it infuses our entire lives. We have connected vehicles. We have connected factories. And all of these are creating a tremendous amount of data that we need to protect. Likewise, the attack surface is changing. So if we look at where that's coming, it's now talking about firmware and hardware, silicon, and motherboards. It's the supply chain. And every aspect of data that as it gets created, as it gets transferred, as it gets stored, and it gets computed, in a data center. And all of that has to be protected. And this entire ecosystem has a role to play in each and every stage along that path. So first, we need to build trust into our products. We at Intel believe that that starts at the silicon level and begins with us providing technologies that allow for other layers of the platform and ecosystem to build upon. Whether that's some form of attestation, whether that's technologies to allow virtual machines to be isolated in a cloud and a multi-tenant cloud environment. These are all technologies that we build in order to allow other layers of the platform to depend on. But we have to make sure that every step of that value chain is thinking about the data and how they protect that data. And each member of that value chain has a role to play, whether you're a policy person, an end user, a developer, an OEM, or a virus protection software company. Now, we all have a role to play here, and we have to take a deeper look at some other aspects of building trust with our customers into the future. I think coordinated vulnerability disclosure process is another way that we speak to our customer base about trusting us in our technology. And at the heart of that is the ability to patch our platforms as well. And whether you're talking about a software application or you're talking about firmware, we must enable technologies to be able to patch themselves very rapidly. It has to be easy, it has to be flawless, and it has to not create any interruptions for the end user of those technologies. Furthermore, we need to change socially to ensure that our end customers are adept and regularly do that adaptation to patching as a way of life. And it's just critically important. Next, we have to earn that trust. And in particular, it's through that collaboration as an ecosystem that I just mentioned. But at times, it may require more than your typical collaboration from a motherboard up to an OEM and then all the way through to an end customer, that whole value chain. Those are what I call sort of the typical collaboration styles. But it may also require a new, non-traditional way of collaborating. And a great example of that is competitors actually working together because we are jointly focused on protecting end customers' data. And a fine example of that was in our Spectre meltdown experience within the last couple of years. You saw companies like Intel working with AMD and ARM and NVIDIA and other CPU vendors in the industry because we were focused on protecting those end customers. And we, as an entire ecosystem, from policymakers all the way to security professionals, need to take that same approach in order to focus on protecting our end customers. And then this is another area where that coordinated vulnerability disclosure is a fantastic example where we've had a process in place for ensuring that customers receive mitigations for vulnerabilities that are disclosed, and those mitigations are available at the time of disclosure. But those processes need to evolve as well. We need to be looking at whether 90 days is the right amount of time. Perhaps there's parts of the platform that end customers are best served if we take longer to ensure that the entire ecosystem is aligned. We need to look at incentives and ask the question, should we also be rewarding the first defender at the same time we're rewarding the first finder of a vulnerability? And of course, most of all, we need to be sure that we're never zero-daying each other as we all work collectively in order to protect the end customer's data. Now, in the third and last pillar of building this trust in our technology for customers who are using our technology, we have to keep that trust through continued leadership and continued investment. And that may look like new technologies, as a great example. As quantum comes online in the next decade or two, sounds a little bit like science fiction, but it's here, it is real. And so how do we collaborate and invest in order to ensure that we can provide the protections on data that customers expect in the long run? It also requires leadership from us. It requires changes, perhaps at a social level, as an end user has to be continuing to exercise best practices, whether they be an IT shop or your mom and dad at home, in order to protect their data. We have to look at the impact of cloud and this massive amount of data that's being collected and how that we can together provide environments that provide for that isolation and that protection while also providing an environment for innovation. And certainly on the policy front, it's critical that as world governments look at policy, that they look at global aspects of policy, they look at creating transparent supply chains, but at the same time, those policies that are protecting and creating protecting a common good also need to create an environment for innovation in a global way. And so it's absolutely critical that we in this room come together, provide the leadership, provide that investment necessary so that customers' data is protected over the decades to come. Now, in conclusion, as I said, I think it's just such an important time for all of us to come together at a great event like this, whether you be a policymaker, whether you be a developer, a research assistant, a research professional, or a security professional. It's just super critical that we continue to work as an ecosystem, that we continue to collaborate in the best interest of the end customer at all times. At Intel, we took a pledge last year that we called our Security First Pledge. And in it, we committed to being transparent as we learn about vulnerabilities and as we work through the security of our data. We committed to acting with customer-first urgency, so always focusing on what the end customer needs and ensuring that that is our first priority. And we focused on continuing investments in security assurance on our own products to ensure that we are holding ourselves accountable as we move forward. Now, this was an open letter to the ecosystem, and we invited our partners and our customers to come with us on this journey and commit themselves to it as well. As I said, we, Intel, are absolutely committed. And we are creating those building blocks that are a trusted foundation of computing for the data-centric age. And we are absolutely committed to making sure that this data and these technologies reach end customers. And I sincerely hope you are too. Again, thank you very much for your time today, and have a fantastic week.